Draw the unit circle. It has 66 numbers on it, so don't be like overwhelmed. But there's a lot of stuff, but they're not. It's things that we can. Some of the things we've already learned, then just a couple new things to learn in drawing it. So the very first thing with the unit circle that you need to do is we have to actually draw the circle. So there's going to be 4 points on the outside. So there's a point way down here, a point way over here, a point way up here, and a point way over here. Okay? We're going to connect those to draw a circle. So we have a circle, best we can. That goes all the way around. Okay? So mine's not perfect. It's, just do the best you can, making a circle that goes all the way around. That's how you begin your unit circle. Okay, now the first thing that we are going to do is we're going to draw some lines in each of the 4 quadrants. So if you remember, there's 4 quadrants in a graph. There's quadrant 1, quadrant 2, quadrant 3, and quadrant 4. All the way around a circle is 360 degrees. So in each quadrant, there's 90 degrees, right? And so all the way around would get us to 360. So we're going to draw a couple lines in each one, okay? And that's going to help us get this. So the first line on mine is going to be blue. It should be at about 1/3. So about a third. We want it to be at like 30 degrees. So I'll show you. Let me draw all 3 of them first, and then you can kind of see what I'm talking about. So there's a 30-degree line that's in blue. If you're using red, this is fine. This would be a 45-degree. That would be like halfway. And then there should be one that is a 60 degrees. Like right there. So like in this angle, this whole side is 90 degrees. You have 30, 45, 60. So you have 3 lines in that. And the blue line, see if I can continue it on. Would continue on. Probably not. Do a little bit better. Here, the purple line would continue, or the red, if that's what you're doing, would continue on here, and the green would continue on. There. Okay. So you make 3 lines in the unit circle. Okay. Then we're going to do the same on the other side. All right. We're going to do the same thing on from the top left to the bottom right. So if I'm making blue, green, and red, the blue is going to be this first one here. It's like at about 30 degrees, and it would continue here, and then the red, which I made as purple, would be about right here.
From Ms. Anthony Cash, A Square, please report to media attached to this conversation. Anthony Cash.
It would continue there, and then lastly is the green. It would continue there. All right. So now we have our 3 lines in each quadrant. So that's like the starting point for the unit circle. Okay. So now we have to say, we're going to say where they are, what degrees they are. First is what we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about, and this will be written in black. We're just going to talk about what degrees are these at as we go around the circle. Okay. So when we start on the circle in standard form, we are at 0 degrees, right? This, up to here, there's a pretty big space here. This line would put us at 30 degrees. This is 30. This next line is only a 15 difference. It cuts that 90-degree angle in half. So what does that put us at? 45, right? And then this next line is only a 15 difference also. So those three are all kind of close together. So this one puts us at 60. Okay? So we're at 0, then 30 degrees, then 45 degrees, then 60 degrees. That makes sense. If you get to here, so you start at 0 degrees. If you get to here, where are you at? This line right here. 90 degrees. Right? We go to the next line, which would be the green. How many degrees are we at? Think about how far away it is here and how far away it would be here. How far is it from 60 to 90? 30. So 30 more than 90 is 120. So this is 120 degrees. 15 more puts you at 135 degrees. 15 more puts you at 150 degrees. And halfway through the circle will put us at 180 degrees. So now we've done the whole top half of the circle. So if you notice the pattern, it's like 30, 15, 15, 30. 30, 15, 15, 30. That's how it's working. Right? So 30 more than 180 puts us at 210 degrees. 15 more is 225. 15 more is 240. And then 30 more down here, we would be at 270 degrees. 30 more puts us at 300. 15 more puts us at 315. 15 more puts us at 330. And then 30 more takes us all the way back around the circle to the beginning. And that was a full 360 degree turn all the way around. So now we've gone all the way around the circle from 0 to 360. From degrees to radians, you're going to put pi with it, okay? And you are going to divide it by 180. So it's like multiplying by pi over 180. You put pi with it, and you divide by 180, okay? So if the angle is 0, if the angle is 0 degrees, in radians, it's still going to be 0. There's nothing there. If it's 30 degrees, though, 30 divided by 180 is 1/6. Which is pi over 6. So we just write that as pi over 6. Okay? 45 divided by 180 is 1/4. So we write that as pi over 4. So we're just writing what they are in radians, like where we did radians to degrees. 60 divided by 180 is 1/3. So that would be pi over 3. 90 divided by 180 is 1/2. So that would be pi over 2. Now the fractions get a little bit different, but they're still good. 120 divided by, anytime you want to find these, you would just divide by 180 and put it in your calculator and change it to a fraction. So 120 divided by 180 is 2/3. So that's 2 pi over 3. 135 divided by 180 is 3/4. So that's 3 pi over 4. 150 divided by 180 is 5/6. So now I write 5 pi over 6. And then 180 divided by 180 is just 1. So I just write pi, because that's 1 pi. Okay, so now I've finished the top half. I've got what it is in degrees, and I've got what it is in radians. So it doesn't matter whether they ask you degrees or radians, you have the numbers that match up. If they say 120 degrees, you know that's 2 pi over 3. If they say 60 degrees, you know that's 1 pi over 3. All right, so for 210, if I take 210 divided by 180, that's 7 over 6. So 7 pi over 6. 225 divided by 180 is 5 over 4. So I write 5 pi over 4. 240 divided by 180 is 4 over 3. So I'm going to write 4 pi over 3. And then I have 270 divided by 180. That's 3 over 2. So 3 pi over 2. Now I've got 3 more to go and we'll be done. Actually 4. But 300 divided by 180 is 5/3. So that's 5 pi over 3. 315 divided by 180 is 7/4. So 7 pi over 4. 330 divided by 180 is 11 over 6. So 11 pi over 6. And then finally I get to 360 divided by 180. That is 2. So I would write 2 pi. And we should have already known all the way around the circle is 360 degrees, which is 2 pi. Halfway around the circle is 180 degrees, which is 1 pi. So we got all those numbers. We got all the degrees, and we've got them all written in radians. So that is 34 numbers right there of the 66. And you should be able to come up with those. So like you should know it goes 30, 45, 60 in each quadrant. So if you can write what they are in degrees by going around the circle, then you can then write what they are in radians by just dividing it by 180 and making it a fraction. So those numbers, I would think you'll be able to come up with by yourself just by looking at it, okay, when you have a blank one, because you can figure out the degrees, and if you have the degrees, you should be able to change it to radians. So you don't have to make it harder, than it really is. These points are, and so I have a point down here, I have a point up here, I have a point over here, and I have a point over here. Well, this is my x-axis, and this is my y-axis. In a unit circle, it only goes 1. The radius is 1, meaning the distance from the distance from the center to any point on the circle is 1. So over here, this point is, the x value would be 1, and the y value up and down would be 0. Okay? So that's like moving 1 to the right. If you're over there, you're at the point 1, 0. If you're up here, your x value, left and right, is 0. Your y value is 1. Right? If you're over here all the way to the left, your x value is -1. Your y value up and down is 0. And if you're down at the bottom, your x value is 0, you didn't move, and your y value is now -1. So those 4 points are the easiest to get. Okay? The other points we are going to have to get from a formula. Okay? Now, what I say is if you can remember 1, 2, 3, you can remember these points. So if you can remember the numbers 1, 2, 3, you can remember these, okay? So the way this works is it's like a Ferris wheel, okay? It's like a Ferris wheel. You're starting at the ground, or at not the ground, but at the middle of it. That's at 0. And you continue to go up until you get to +1, right? Then you continue to go back down until you get to 0 for your y. Then it goes down further until you get to -1. That's where they would drop you off or pick you up on the Ferris wheel. Then at -1, it goes back up until you get to 0. That's your y values. Okay, so your y values, notice they're at 0. They go up till you get to 1. They go down till you get to 0. They continue to go down to -1. They go back up to 0. Now the numbers that they move are 1, 2, and 3. So the first thing we're going to do is get our points ready that we're going to use. So all the ones that are blue, I'm going to it's going to be a point. We're going to find these points. So I'm just going to go ahead and set it up for what we're about to do. So all the blue ones, and then all the other colors. I'll set all these up. And there are points on the circle. Okay, you can do the same thing with these green ones. And then lastly, I'm going to do the same thing with these purples real quick. I'm going to do the purple and fill in those points. And now I have where I'm going to end up putting all my points. Okay, so there's going to be an X and a Y for every point there that goes around the circle. This is the only part that could be hard in the unit circle is figuring out what numbers do I put in for those points. Okay, so I'm going to try to explain it to you and make it as easy as 1, 2, 3 is how it works. Okay, so you're going to be using the square root of 1, which is, and you'll figure it out in a second, the square root of 2, and the square root of 3. Okay? Now, the square root of 1 is 1. So just think about that. Okay? Square root of 1 is 1. The square root of 2, if you don't know what the square root of 2 is, you can put it in your calculator, but it's a small number. It's a number bigger than 1, but less than 2. So the square root of 2 is 1.4, and then the square root of 3 is 1.7. All right. Now, here's how it's going to work. We're going to slowly get to 1. So it's going to be, we're going to use the square root of 1 over 2, the square root of 2 over 2, and the square root of 3 over 2. And we're going to work our way up from 0 to 1. So I'm going to show you what that means. So the square root of 1 over 2 is just 1/2. Okay? Square root of 1 over 2 is just 1/2, which is 0.5. The square root of 2 over 2 is just 1.4 divided by 2. That's 0.7. The square root of 3 over 2 is going to be about 0.85. So think about you're on a Ferris wheel. You're at 0. We don't have to write square root of 1, right? Because the square root of 1 is just 1. So you're at 0, and you're moving up the ladder, or the Ferris wheel. What's the next spot that you'll be at? 1/2, square root of 2 over 2, or square root of 3 over 2? If you're at 0, what's the next spot you'll get to? Should be 1/2, right? After you're at 1/2, so that we're looking at our y values right now because we're going up and down. After you're at 1/2, what's the next spot that you'll get to? What's up? What's a little bit higher than 0.5? 0.7. The square root of 2 over 2. So square root of 2 over 2. What's a little bit higher than square root of 2 over 2? Square root of 3 over 2, right? So think about it. 1, 2, 3 is what you're doing. You're climbing the ladder. Now, how did I get the number 1 here? Well, think about it. The square root of 1 over 2, the square root of 2 over 2, the square root of 3 over 2. This is the square root of 4 over 2. But the square root of 4 is 2 divided by 2 is just 1. That's how they got that 1. So it goes 0, square root of 1 over 2, square root of 2 over 2, square root of 3 over 2, square root of 4 over 2. But the square root of 4 over 2 is 1. Now that you're at the top at 1, you want to work your way back down. So what's the next number that I would be at? If I'm working my way back down. Yep. I would be at the square root of 3 over 2. Be at, right? Because it's the closest to 1. If I'm going down a little bit more, where would I go to next? I was at the square root of 3 over 2, and I'm going back down. So now I'm at the square root of 2 over 2, right? Next, I'll be at 1 over 2. And then finally, I'll be at 0. Okay? So look at your y values and don't say it doesn't make sense. Think about it. 0 is where you start on your y's. You go up. So you're at 1 over 2, square root of 2 over 2, square root of 3 over 2. Now you're at positive 1. That's the highest you can go. Now you go back down. Square root of 3 over 2, square root of 2 over 2, 1 over 2, and now you're at 0. Okay? So you go up till you get to the top, and then you're going back down. Now, the ones on the bottom, our y's are all going to be what? They're below 0, so they're all going to be what? Negative. Right. So let's start with the first one. If you're at 0 and you want to be a little bit less than 0, you're going to be at negative 1/2. If you go a little bit lower than negative 1/2, you're going to be at negative square root of 2 over 2. If you go a little bit lower than negative square root of 2 over 2, now you're going to be at negative square root of 3 over 2. If you go a little bit lower than negative square root of 3 over 2, now you're at negative 1. Okay? Once you get to negative 1, we want to start to go back up. So then you go to negative square root of 3 over 2. And you're going to make your way back up to now negative square root of 2 over 2. And then you're going to make your way back up to negative 1 over 2. And all the way now back up to 0. So look at our y values one more time. We go from 0 to 1/2, square root of 2 over 2, square root of 3 over 2, 1, square root of 3 over 2, square root of 2 over 2, 1/2, 0. Negative 1/2, negative square root of 2 over 2, negative square root of 3 over 2, negative 1, negative square root of 3 over 2, negative square root of 2 over 2, negative 1/2, and 0. If you notice, look at the blue line that goes through. Those are your 1/2s and your negative 1/2s, right? The purple line, those are your square root of 2s over 2 and your negative square root of 2 over 2. The green, those are your square root of 3 over 2s and your negative square root of 3 over 2. So that's why we draw that line all the way through. Because it's the same in every quadrant, no matter which quadrant you're in. The same numbers. Now, we want to end up doing the same thing with the x's, okay? So we want to do the same thing from 1 all the way across to negative 1. So what x value is closest to 1? Which of these are closest to 1? The square root of 3 over 2, right? So that's going to be the next, that's going to be the one we put in next. So we put in square root of 3 over 2. And then, so we're going lower, right? We're going from 1 all the way to negative 1. So we start at 1, now we're at square root of 3 over 2. we're moving to the left. Notice our x's are moving to the left. So we're going to get smaller. So our next x is a little bit smaller. That's the square root of 2 over 2. Our next x is a little bit smaller than that because it's moving further to the left. It's 1 over 2. Our next x is a little bit smaller than that. It's 0. Okay? When we're on the left side, our x should be negative because we're on the left side of the graph. So now we're at negative 1 over 2. We move farther to the left. Now we're at negative square root of 2 over 2. We move even farther to the left. Now we're at negative square root of 3 over 2. And we move even farther to the left. And now we're at negative 1. Once we hit negative 1, we've now gone all the way from positive 1 over to negative 1. Okay? We can do that exact same thing again. On the bottom. Think about it. We're doing the exact same thing on the bottom. The bottom is going to be the same as the top for these because we're moving from positive 1 all the way across to negative 1. So we start with the square root of 3 over 2. That's the closest thing to 1. And then we go to the square root of 2 over 2. And then we go to 1 over 2. Then we get to 0. Now we're going negative. So we go negative 1 over 2. Then we go negative square root of 2 over 2. And then we go negative square root of 3 over 2. And then we end up with negative 1. Then at this point, we sit back, take a deep breath, and say we finished the whole unit circle. Okay? So there are 66 different numbers on the unit circle. To know it is to know your angles first. So if you want to take this and make it not overwhelming, the very first thing you should do is start on the inside like I did and get your angles. Okay, so it goes up by 30, 15, 15, 30, 30, 15, 15, 30, 30, 15, 15, 30, 30, 15, 15, 30. That's the first thing you do. Get all your angles. Then divide them by 180 to get them in pi. You've got all that. So the inside's taken care of. So you're good with the inside. Then, you know the unit circle, I told you the radius is 1. So this point is 1, 0 because you go over to the right 1. This point is 0, 1 because you go up 1. This point's negative 1, 0 because you go left 1. This point's 0, negative 1 because you go down 1. The point in the unit circle, here's a pattern. There's 0. It's basically, here's the pattern is, it's the square root of 0 over 2. That's 0. Then the square root of 1 over 2. Then the square root of 2 over 2. Then the square root of 3 over 2. Then finally, the square root of 4 over 2. So if you know how to count 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, you've got all the x's and y's. So the y starts at 0. That's the square root of 0 over 2. That's 0. Then it's the square root of 1 over 2, which is 1/2. Square root of 2 over 2. Square root of 3 over 2. And then square root of 4 over 2, which is just 1. Then it goes back, square root of 3 over 2, square root of 2 over 2. Remember, that's the square root of 1 over 2, which is just 1/2. And then 0. Negative 1/2, negative square root of 2 over 2, negative square root of 3 over 2, negative 1, negative square root of 3 over 2, negative square root of 2 over 2, negative 1/2, 0. Those are your y's. Your x's, if you want to start your x's at 0 and say, going to the right, make some positive. 0, 1/2, square root of 2 over 2, square root of 3 over 2, 1. If you go to the left, 0, negative 1/2, negative square root of 2 over 2, negative square root of 3 over 2, negative 1. Once you hit negative 1 and 1, you're going to go all the way from negative 1 to positive 1. So negative 1, negative square root of 3 over 2, negative square root of 2 over 2, negative 1/2, 0, 1/2, square root of 2 over 2, square root of 3 over 2, and then positive 1. And that's how you're able to make your way around. Okay? Now, the last thing we want to write on this unit circle that we're looking at is my x's and my y's. If I'm in the top right, in this area right here, my x's and my y's are both what? They're both what kind of numbers? Positive or negative? Up here. The x and y are both what? Positive. So I'm going to write big up here somewhere that you have left, plus, plus. That means the x and the y are both positive. Okay? Over here in the top left, the x is what? Negative, and the y is positive. So I'm going to write minus plus, just so I know. Down here in the bottom right, or in the bottom left, sorry, the x is negative and the y is negative. So I'm going to write minus, minus. And then way over here in the bottom right, the x is positive and the y is negative. So each of the four quadrants you can kind of see. That's going to be important later on. Okay? So as we go through the unit circle, it's going to be very important to know where are my positive numbers, where are my negative numbers, and where are numbers that might be positive and negative. And so we start with this. This is what you need to answer all the questions in these next two sections, okay? Is you need this unit circle. It will answer hundreds of questions. It can answer all kinds of things just from this one circle.